Pokemon Red and Blue, released February 27th, 1996, saw the inauguration of one of the multimedia cultural phenomenons which is integrated in the 1990s zeitgeist and beyond. The Pokemon video game series, in particularly, has grew from the monochrome to the hyper-realism of the modern day, spanning 9 generations with more to come. The most unique aspects defining the franchise are the niche communities which are created and coexist together. Most notably, the Pokemon speedrunning community has grown to an extent whereby thousands compete across multiple categories to achieve Pokemon mastery in a way developers did not intend or perceive was possible. The original titles are arguably the most broken video games, with walk-through wall glitches, save corruption warps, instant victory exploits, and the ability to beat Pokemon in under 1 minute. However, this speedrun archive will specifically focus on the original Pokemon Red and Blue, with speedrunners revealing the fragile structures of the games through the limits pushed to achieve the status as the fastest time to beat Pokemon. While the two games have several competitive categories, we'll delve into the history of the main category, Pokemon Any% Glitchless, as well as a brief overview of the other categories which display Pokemon Red and Blue's tag as the most nostalgic yet flawed games in the series. Before we begin, let's define the Red and Blue speedrun categories. Like most speedrun games, Pokemon Red and Blue features several categories in which players compete for the fastest times. The most notable category being Any% Glitchless, with hundreds of players recording runs on the leaderboards. As this is the game's primary category for Red and Blue, the run's aim consisted of gaining away gym badges, conquering the champion and registering the Hall of Fame, without the use of glitches and exploits to do so. Simple, yet the category would experience a series of small to game-breaking discoveries, new tricks, optimizations and routes which achieved the seemingly impossible. While the story begins in 2008 with a player by the name of Jacob91, in June a 2-hour 39-minute run was set. Fairly primitive from what we know today. Some strategies such as using Squirtle as the starter Pokemon saw continuity. It was a low bar. However, the story actually begins on November 24th, 2011. Enter an iconic speedrunner, Worcester. Firstly, Worcester submitted his run to a site called Speed Demos Archive instead of speedrun.com like we know today. Nevertheless, this was the first sub 2-hour run of Pokemon Red and Blue. This was nearly a full 40 minutes ahead of the 2008 record by Jacob91. So let's get right into it. At the beginning of the game, a player has a choice between 3 starters: Squirtle, the water type, Bulbasaur, the grass type, and Charmander, the fire type. In this run, Worcester opts for a Squirtle, instead of both Bulbasaur and Charmander respectively. This is necessary for a multitude of reasons. Squirtle's type effectiveness early on is a great option, ahead of Charmander as a possible option. Squirtle's ability to learn a wide range of TMs and moves, as well as a late game move called Fissure, which despite its low accuracy, can knock an opponent out in one hit. Pokemon Red and Blue's stat mechanics allow Fissure to be 100% accurate, however, instead of 30% accurate when applying an X accuracy, as seen in Worcester's run. X items are supposed to raise a stat by a stage or 2, yet here the item bypasses this and acts as a constant 100%. Another important detail is the idea of Squirtle being the best it could possibly be. We'll discuss this later with the impact of DVs. However, for now, Worcester attempts to find a Squirtle with stats which are the best possible, or near to perfect. For its time, Worcester's intricate movement, routing, as well as battle calculations saved large amounts of time, while progressing to areas and avoiding healing at Poké Centers when necessary. And with this time, Worcester's record sat at the top of Speed Demos Archive for just under 2 years, and there seemed to be no obvious contender for Pokemon's quickest time. Even the man himself could only lower his time by a minute 2 years later, until a player by the name Extra Tricky emerged.
Damn. Dude, 41-51. I think that's like better than my best Misty split.
On May 27th, 2013, Extra Tricky tied the world record, but between the two players lay several distinct differences. Firstly, Worcester had completed both records on original Game Boy hardware, which at the time ran at a slightly lower frame rate than emulation. The method used by Extra Tricky. Overall, this meant that across the 2-hour run, seconds are saved. While modern innovations of emulators accurately replicate the Game Boy's hardware, this caused controversy back in 2013.
Yes! I got it! Yes! 157!
The runs featured several distinct differences between the two players. Extra Tricky began to challenge the primitive strategies of Worcester with a new strategy which would experience longevity, the Nidoking strategy.
Alright, so I'm gonna be pretty much even on the split. So I'll be about a minute ahead. Please cry. I also
Runs featuring Squirtle by Worcester relied upon the Squirtle receiving sufficient DVs, which are similar to IVs in the sense that each stat of a Pokemon can have an additional boost, up to 15 in all attack, defense, HP, speed and special stats. While the DVs were not accessible to players visibly, runners can gauge the levels from a Pokemon's aforementioned core stats. This is something that Worcester does throughout the run. Worcester acquired a Squirtle which had 12 attack, 12 special, and 11 to 12 speed at level 6, shortly after the rival battle finishes. Therefore, runs relied upon a starter Squirtle before attempt could be made, relying solely on the time-consuming RNG. However, Extra Tricky quickly ascended the leaderboard for more reliable and 100% accurate Pokemon than Nidoking. Before we discuss the strategy, we must explain Pokemon Red and Blue's RNG, or random number generator. RNG is essentially the random occurrence of events, such as encountering a Pokemon, battle sequences, and much more below the game's surface. In Pokemon Red and Blue, the sequence of RNG is reset and changed upon resetting the handheld or powering on. Extra Tricky manipulates this during the run to force a Nidoran encounter with perfect DVs at level 4 all the time. In this run, a Nidoran is manipulated with perfect DVs with a 100% success ratio if the inputs are correctly performed upon powering on the console. Compared to Worcester's runs, the Nidoran manipulation allowed Extra Tricky to have a high quantity of late game attempts. Here is an example of the Nidoran manip used by myself in one of my own runs. This is a much longer sequence and takes around 10 seconds more than Extra Tricky's in his early run. However, you get the idea. You're probably wondering, why a Nidoran? Well, Nidoran offers an early game encounter, only around 5 minutes into runs, complemented by its evolutions, Nidorino at level 16, and its subsequent evolution via Moonstone, found in Mount Moon in around under 20 minutes Nidoking. It offers a Pokemon with not only high stats, but an increasing wide move pool, which limits the Squirtle run. Another strategy deployed to influence RNG happens at Mount Moon, where high encounter rates spoil potential records. Mount Moon is a dungeon consisting of a lot of wild Pokemon, trainers and key items, which all runners have to proceed to advance. A manipulation is performed, allowing for no encounters within Mount Moon, shaving significant minutes off of time. However, while these weren't used within some of the earlier runs, some strategies were deployed in order to influence this. As well as this, Extra Tricky played on Pokemon Red compared to Worcester who played on Pokemon Blue. Therefore, grabbing a Paris within Mount Moon is forced in order to learn TMs like Cut and Dig, essential for running the game. This accessibility to cut trees, blocking progression and digging to locations was essential. However, on the other hand, we do see Worcester opt for a Sandstrew at the exit of Mount Moon. Equally viable, but instead is only encounterable in Pokemon Blue. In Worcester's 157 time, there are many strategies which draw similarities with Extra Tricky. For example, the fight with a rival requires excellent luck for the Bulbasaur to tackle and not lower your attack, wasting significant time. Route 1 has several grass tiles which initiate encounters, with Worcester requiring only a minimum of 1 encounter to knock out for additional XP. This is necessary to learn the water type attack Bubble at level 8 for the first gym leader. In this run the rival battle took around 9 turns, something which can be significantly reduced, but a 2 encounter Route 1 compensated. Another area which is extremely tricky to navigate is Viridian Forest, as time can be lost through a load of encounters. As you can see in this map of the area, no encounters can be generated through this route. The yellow area means that no encounters can be generated, while the red areas can. This route is mostly accurate unless you get bad luck on the red areas. Secondly, you have Mount Moon, as just previously stated, an area which is littered with encounters, trainers and items. There was no available knowledge at the time of how you could potentially control this area's RNG, which mercilessly could just ruin any run at a great pace. So come the end of 2013, there was only 2 players really at the top, with 2 contrasting strategies to boot. But how did the record for any percent glitchless change? After the great feats of Worcester and Extra Tricky respectively, Pokemon Red and Blue speedruns drastically grew in popularity, especially in 2013, with 12 world records set. A runner called Bees lowered the record less than a month later to a 156, with Worcester, Extra Tricky and Bees tying the world record at a 155 within the space of 2 months. Worcester's doggedly stuck to Squirtle, while both Extra Tricky and newcomer Bees competed with the Nidoking strategy. At the end of 2013, Mountebank held the Pokemon Any Percent Glitchless world record, and apart from a minute saved here and there, the record seemingly was not going to go much lower, with a 154 in the late 2013 shared by Extra Tricky, Worcester, Mountebank and J-Pain Train. There really was nothing astonishingly new about these runs. But on July 9th, 2014, a new player arrived to take the world record, Exarion.
Holy shit. Holy shit. 34 at the most. I've never seen this be 150. never seen this not be -1.5. I'm just gonna commentate over this so who cares what I react. If he does that, he'll just always use his electric move and kill Squirtle or Pidgey. Alright, so I can save like 40 seconds here, but I need like a 4-turn in this fight, otherwise I'll have to switch to Oddish.
It's clear that Xarian knows what he's talking about, clearly using minor strategies to save loads of time. As I'd previously mentioned, the category's optimization cannot be more symbolically shown by the red bar strategy. Throughout these two fights that I've got here, Xarian enters the lower 25% proportion of Nidoking's HP, or the red bar health. A constant warning sound effect plays out until a Pokemon goes above the threshold. While frustrating to the average player, this effect allows for the time to be taken away from runs. Speedrunners utilize the sound effect to bypass the animations of leveling up and incoming Pokemon, saving small amounts of time. Specifically, which over a 2-hour run adds up to a huge time save. Recently, the red bar strategy has been developed and harnessed by the runners in areas of the game deemed to be too dangerous to deploy the strategy. Sylph Bar is effectively maintaining the red bar throughout Sylph Co and the later gyms, which in Poker Guy's run at 144.03, which we'll get into in more depth later, is most successfully used. But we'll return to this later in more detail. So with the abundance of optimizations, strategies and Pokemon, how did this impact the world record? It seemed a huge challenge to surpass Xarian's time of 150, although he did lower the time by a minute as well as Gunner Maniac. Seemingly no better RNG was possible to successfully gain in all areas of a run. No subtle optimizations beyond this could improve times. Until November 2nd, 2015, the consistency of runs was greatly improved. A runner by the name of Swamp was in the early section of a run at Cerulean City, location of the bike shop. The bike allows players rapid pace around the region, but without obtaining the bike voucher in the preceding Vermilion City, the shop held minimal interest. That was when Swamp discovered in 2015 the revolutionary time save, instant text.
Oh, goody. So yeah, that's what you do when you're on good time. You choke and do stupid shit like that. Like, muscle memory kicked in from digging. And I thought that I was going to get the, that was a nice crit. Wait, what? Why is my text going that fast? What did I just do? I am so confused. Like, how is it doing that?
So what's really going wrong here? Let's go back in the clip and have a look. Swamp hadn't actually received a bike voucher before speaking to the man. This accident proved to be a groundbreaking discovery which made all text of NPC interactions, battles and items print with instant text, or each character at 0 frames. The potential of this was huge. As many runners competed to lower their times further, it was a contentious aspect of the community. Considered a natural glitch, many accepted the discovery of the developer error, yet some believed it was a clear unintentional aspect conforming to a glitch. Nevertheless, any percent glitchless runs were able to use the discovery, but a separate category was established, which accepted any percent glitchless runs without instant text. The discovery redefined the previously blurred line between what was considered an unintended development error or a full player manipulation. Although when receiving the bike, opening the menu, or when healing at a centre, a yes or no box appears, the instant text was not permanent. Therefore, being particularly specific when using the instant text was integral to be effective in time-reducing benefits. Typically, runners would use the instant text through Cerulean City and the SSN before receiving the bike voucher, which with several battles and interactions saved approximately 1 to 1.5 minutes, which when considering the past record's inability to reduce time by more than a minute each time was highly significant. And this was the speedrunning story so far of one of the most synonymous gaming titles. These players have brought new life to the original Pokemon Red and Blue and have captivated many across the world with the core principles of training, trading and battling. But now the race to become the fastest to do so above all is a prestigious accolade, which will experience continuity even if the human threshold has seemingly been reached. Thanks for watching.